Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. I am glad you're here, whether you're watching live or whether you're joining us later. And it is July 2nd. So to my Canadian audience, I hope you had a wonderful Canada Independence Day yesterday and enjoyed the fireworks. And hopefully you still have some time off. And to my American audience, I hope you're getting ready for a wonderful 4th of July celebration. I am looking forward to my youngest coming home with a 4-day leave from the Army, so it will be a wonderful celebration here for sure. Now, my other two are going to go to Canada for a visit, so they'll be vacationing up there this coming weekend, and they're looking forward to returning to what we consider home away from home in the Montreal area. Now, with that, today's show is really about breaking up being hard to do. We've all heard that said, right? Well, what about when it's with a narcissist? Have you ever had a narcissist in your life? Perhaps you've worked for one. Maybe you were even the child of one, or were married to one, or dated one. And if so, have you ever tried to end the relationship? Well, it isn't easy. We're going to talk about that today. That whole breaking up process, some might call it, with the narcissist. But first, what is narcissism? We seem to kind of throw that word around casually these days, don't we? And I often hear from participants in support groups or from clients in sessions that, he or she is such a narcissist when someone's sharing about their current or past partner, or they may ask me if the person they describe to me is a narcissist. And often the word is used just to label someone who is seemingly being selfish in a particular situation. And if that were the true definition, we would all be narcissists from time to time, wouldn't we? So let's begin by first trying to understand the real definition of the term. And as my proud Greek American husband would say, the term narcissism comes from the Greeks, like most everything in modern culture. And I would say, do you really want to claim this one, honey? Well, in Greek mythology, Narcissus was a young man who fell in love with his own reflection after seeing it in water. And the father of psychoanalytical movement, Sigmund Freud, published an essay titled On Narcissism, which then popularized the term and defined traits of narcissism sometime around the year 1914. And since then, there have been tons of studies in an effort to really capture the traits and tendencies of narcissism. And while there are many variations, in short, individuals high in narcissism are considered vain and grandiose with a heightened sense of entitlement, thinking that they deserve more than others and are better than others. And when this is observed and confirmed as unchangeable, kind of constant character traits, then a clinical diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder is made. Now, one study separated narcissism into kind of 3 viewpoints, which I found quite interesting. And those 3 points are: 1, how they view themselves; 2, how they relate to others; and 3, how they self-regulate. So when it comes to the first viewpoint, their how they see themselves, there's a strong vanity because they believe they're unique and special, and therefore they possess a sense of entitlement and a need to have power over others, as well as to be admired by others. And so therefore, to point 2, their relationship to others, there's very low empathy because it's really still about themselves. So narcissistic individuals use other people as a tool for achieving their goals. So their interpersonal relationships are very surface level. There's not any real depth to them because they're very exploitative, and everything about them are manipulated to the desired end of the narcissist. So narcissists end up bragging about themselves a lot while putting others in their lives down in order to continue lifting themselves up. So when it comes to that third point, self-regulation, this is really about having strategies to maintain their inflated self-views, if you will. And this comes from feeding off of attention and praise from others. And if they aren't getting it, they'll put themselves at the center. They'll find a way to draw attention, and they'll also, take attention away from others by even claiming responsibility for other people's achievements. And when this is working well, a narcissist may even thrive and hold leadership positions and achieve great feats in life. But of course, leaving kind of a wake of damaged individuals in their path. Now, the greater danger here is that when these strategies fail, when they're not getting the attention, when they're not getting the accolades, narcissists react. And a narcissist's reactions are typically vengeful, aggressive, criminal even. And there's something known as narcissistic collapse. And this occurs when there's a loss of ego, as in perhaps loss of a job or a breakup in a relationship, because their sense of self-worth is based on the interpretation of others. They cannot lose. So when there's a threat to ego, when you do not respond to their charm and manipulation, if they're in that leadership role, they're going to fire you or break up with you and then create the narrative that boosts them and crushes you. Narcissists do not accept what they perceive to be rejection. And that triggers what is known as this narcissistic collapse, which often presents as angry outbursts, vindictive behaviors, and increased physical and verbal aggression. Now, we've all seen this play out on the world stage with the former president of the United States. And whether you love him or hate him, whether you're Republican or Democrat, all reasonable people who can put politics aside observe his behaviors as narcissistic. His collapse behaviors played out live on TV from revered cabinet members, advisors, and even his vice president as being alliances one day to being fired and hang them rhetoric the next. America was not allowed to break up with him. He could not lose, was the message. Therefore, blame someone or something else. Therefore, the election must be rigged, and then turn against anyone who said otherwise and use force, coercion, manipulation to get the result wanted. And when that failed, personally assault the individuals who did not comply. It's textbook. We're going to move on. But you can apply that to any narcissist whom you may have had experience. Now, according to psychologists, there may be many forms of trait narcissism as it's known, but the two basic types of narcissism would be considered what we call grandiose or overt. Those are the ones that are in your face. You see it, you hear it, it's just there, as in the former president. And then there's the vulnerable or covert. And this might be even more dangerous. The difference believed between these is whether they were over-evaluated by their parents as children or under-evaluated, possibly a coldness in their childhood. Now, the overt have that elevated self-esteem, and they're the aggressive, forceful, arrogant, dismissive, dominant, right, interpersonal styles that I was speaking of before. While the covert feel insecure and inadequate, and then they mask it from themselves and the rest of the world by faking a grandiosity. And this type of narcissist, the covert, find the world unfairly against them, and they're victimized with an inability to take criticism of any kind. So when you think about the narcissist who may be or who has been in your life, you may know which background exists for them, which if you do, it might help you understand them. But not to try to fix them. Understand them, not try to fix them. This is my first message for you, because you cannot fix, heal, parent, or love them enough to change them and make them a healthy person to be in relationship with you. Let that idea go. And we'll talk more about it later, but you cannot carry that burden. It is unachievable. Only they can heal themselves. And that is only if they admit that they need to. And that can only happen when we all stop beating their ego and give them a chance to experience any self-awareness at all. Now, my second message to you is this. If you are in relationship with a true narcissist, I've no doubt that it is emotionally abusive. You have to have an amazingly developed and strong sense of self to endure the criticism and blame placed on you, as well as to not feel the responsibility to fix the narcissist in your life. Now, you may be thinking, but my narcissist is someone in my family, and I can't break up with my mom or my dad or my aunt or my uncle or my granny. So boundaries are the answer, right? Well, right and wrong. Narcissists do not respect your boundaries. Boundaries are for you. So you must set boundaries for yourself, say on your time and on your energy, like when you'll hang up the phone, when you will respond or not to a text. And by the way, no response is a response. So like saying no to a boss about work that you are not getting paid to do, or letting them know that it's not okay to speak to you a certain way. Again, they won't respect your boundaries, so you have to. In other words, you don't work without pay. And you will walk out of a meeting where you are being disrespected. Is there a risk? Sure there is. And you must weigh that out. There are strategies you can use to not allow their behaviors to ill affect you, to increase your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and your resilience. However, if you are ill affected mentally or physically, and or something goes against your values, your morals, now by not setting and honoring your own personal boundaries, you are self-sabotaging. So again, boundaries are for you, not for them. And you have to weigh out that risk. But you can learn self-confidence, you can learn self-esteem, and you can build up that sense of self that is required if you must be in relationship with a narcissist. All right, so everyone else, the breakup. All right, I am a living testament to how not to do it. All right, in intimate relationship with my ex-husband, I did the slow detanglement, one knotted strand at a time, walking on eggshells, trying to not set him off, keeping the peace to not spark the flame that would lead to an explosion. Now that led me to living in fear and playing cat and mouse games for years. Now I went forward with divorce, but he still controlled my life. He was enmeshed in my life because he felt entitled to be. And I allowed it until I didn't. And this topic is important because narcissistic abuse syndrome is a real thing. And there's a profound impact on people who have been in these unhealthy, toxic relationships. And we'll talk more about that when we come back, but it's time now for our first commercial break. So don't go far, and we'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are talking about breaking up being very hard to do, especially when you're trying to break up with a narcissist. We've talked about different types of relationships in general, but we're going to focus now on intimate partner relationships. And I mentioned narcissistic abuse syndrome before the break, that it's a real thing, and it truly makes leaving, breaking up, and divorcing difficult. So let's kind of understand what that is. Narcissistic abuse syndrome, or sometimes you may hear it called narcissistic victim syndrome, is really a term for feelings of anxiety and avoidance and fear due to emotional abuse from having been in a relationship with someone with narcissistic personality disorder that we mentioned before is a clinical diagnosis. There's usually feelings of always doing something wrong and maybe feeling like you're going crazy. And this comes from that long-term emotional abuse, and it can leave you feeling somewhat worthless. And once you are trying to get out of the relationship, you may be left feeling isolated because you've been isolated often in narcissistic relationships. So you may feel isolated from friends and family, and there's a lot of shame and guilt that may keep you from having the ability to reconnect. But we're going to talk about the ways to do all of those ways to move forward after a little bit later in the show. But I often hear, how did I end up with a narcissist? And trust me, I ask myself the same question. And it's something that we all should do. And I encourage you to do anytime that you have a breakup of any kind, or you leave a relationship, or you are left. Always do what I call the autopsy on the relationship and find what is your responsibility, what were your strengths, what were your weaknesses, what do you need to learn, how can you grow? But here's the answer. Narcissists attract and maintain partners by looking for people who have specific traits that they value. It's always going to be about them, and these traits can include attractiveness. Narcissists are going to be drawn to people that they find attractive and have some kind of social status that will complement them. They often will look for people that they believe other people admire, and maybe that have talents that they admire. They like to be associated with someone that's going to make them feel more important. Again, always about them. They look for people who have some type of agreeableness. And when I say that, I mean they're drawn to people who want to keep the peace, who don't like conflict, who are highly empathetic, because that makes them exploitable. Do you hear yourself in this? And then there's something known as reflection. Narcissists look for people that can be extensions of themselves, people who they believe will reflect positively on them. That goes back to all of the previous things we said, right? People who make them look good. So, and part of that is being drawn to people who are not narcissistic, so that they can be manipulated to suit their needs. So when a narcissist in your life calls you a narcissist, trust me, it's to confuse and hurt you, because you're the empath most likely. And I often hear this from people that started having self-doubt. Well, am I the narcissist? He or she says I'm a narcissist. Well, keep this in mind when you go there. So let's say that you are ready to break up with a narcissist. You are possibly exhausted, confused, because everything has been about them. You've been lied to, manipulated, gaslit over and over again, whether they're the overt, the in-your-face type, or the covert. And it's a little less in your face. It's subtle. They come across like the victim all the time. But you've made the decision that it's over. It's still not going to be easy. That you can count on. But the first thing you must commit to yourself to doing is to truly breaking up, to be able to be free. And that means committing to going no contact. And the zero contact rule is the advice given by most experts. And the reason is because you can still be manipulated. So now, when you have to co-parent or are engaged in the business of divorce, you may have to have some kind of limited contact. Keep it to business only. Let your lawyer be the communicator. Maybe you have to have someone else, a friend or family member, be the kind of the mediator here, because you are vulnerable to ongoing manipulation. No contact is for a reason. This is a go cold turkey shut down situation. There is no true detangle period. It is cut off. Do you hear me? Please hear me on that. There will be an adjustment period for you. Why? Because you're not a narcissist. That's why. You care about others. It will be hard for you to just let go, but you must. So I've put together sort of my top 3 recommended list of what to stop and start doing right after the no contact. That's the must. That's the have to. Now here's my 3 stops. Number 1, stop analyzing the relationship. You will drive yourself crazy obsessing over the unanswerable whys. I have one client, and when she listens to this, you know who I'm talking to, who is haunted by such questions that are on repeat in her mind's cycle, a self-doubt created by being in a toxic relationship for years. Questions like, why not enough? Will someone else be enough? Why couldn't he love me? What if I was the problem? Can you relate to that? Number 2, stop the dysfunction. You will start downplaying and minimizing their behaviors when you miss them, or your fantasy of them, or when you start stalking their social media and see them, quote unquote, happy. You're going to have to remind yourself of when you had to walk on eggshells and interpret their lies and make excuses for them and justify staying with them. And research shows that many dysfunctional relationships will rely on sex because intimacy and emotional fulfillment, emotional intimacy, and emotional fulfillment are not available. But hear me say this: sex with your narcissist was about their power-driven agenda, their need to be wanted, even if you enjoyed it. So when you're missing them and your fantasy of what the relationship was or should have been, or what you think you're missing when you look at their social media, you need a list of what the truth was in the relationship and hold yourself accountable to the truth. Number 3, stop blaming yourself. Now that you can clearly see your ex for the narcissist, or your to-be ex for the narcissist that they were, recognize how unhealthy it was. Recognize it, but don't blame yourself. The words that he or she called you, stop calling yourself those words. Stop blaming yourself. Stop wondering how you got in there, in that relationship. You were not naive. You were manipulated by a master. This is who they are. We'll talk more about how they get us there. But you were not stupid. You were tricked. So don't let the shame of having ended up there or having stayed keep you in some kind of cycle of now self-punishment. Okay? So give yourself some grace. Remember, they were the expert. You were not, and you're only human. You're going to have some self-esteem issues to overcome, but you can do it and you will get there. But just going to allow yourself some time. Okay? Those are the 3 stops. Let's go to the 3 starts. Well, then let me give you one more stop, because this is something that just happened this week with a client. Stop looking back. Stop looking back. Stop looking back. That's part of that, wasted time thoughts that will haunt people. Stop looking back. The important thing is you've made it out. It's going to be a little bit further down the road when we're going to look at, who we were and what got us there. Right now, stop looking back. You made it out, or you're getting out. You're going to get out. Make the decision to get out. Stop the contact and stop looking back and set your sights on your future. We're going to talk more about that, okay? Can you really live a life without any regrets? Can any of us? No. So what we're going to start doing, I want you to start taking care of yourself. Your nervous system is probably lit up. Depends on how long you've been in this relationship. The anxiety, the fear, this has probably, had you in all kinds of stress modes. You're going to need to calm your nervous system. And this means learning and utilizing different mindfulness tools, different ways to connect mind and body. Breathing exercises, some calming physical things that are going to involve yoga. I love Pilates, but it could be running, dancing, whatever works for you. But you're going to need to connect mind and body and really start moving through something that's for you, that calms the nervous system. Ultimately, it is about caring for you. I also want you to start living for you. And when I say start living for you, this means remember who you were before the relationship. What did you enjoy? Go back to that, whatever interest or activity. Connect with people that were in your lives from before, that were true friends. You really know what a friend is now that you know what one is not. Okay? So find the people and the things that mattered before and start making those connections. Now, that isolation we mentioned earlier may hold you back from this. I'm going to tell you to push through and reach out. You may get some no's, but I promise you'll get some yeses as well. Now, this power they've had over you is only there once you're out of the relationship, as long as you allow it. So it's up to you to start normalizing life again. It can feel difficult. It can feel like you're pulling against almost like a chain that they still have on you. But a little bit and a little bit and a little bit more, and you're going to find your way out. Because part of their strategy was really just to push you down and hold you back and not support you, and the verbal abuse that you likely endured, everything's going to feel a little insecure right now and like new territory. So it's learning to trust yourself again is going to be my third. Start trusting yourself. When you slow down, you calm that nervous system, you're going to be back in touch with you. So sit still and just be and learn to trust yourself again. Recognize what's coming from a voice of fear and what's coming from a voice of higher knowing and self-love. And learning to love yourself is really one of the toughest things after all the abuse that you've been experiencing. And people minimize that word abuse because they think if there wasn't anything physical, it wasn't abusive. But trust me, listen to me, read about it, go to a trusted source. Emotional manipulation is abuse. We're going to go to our next break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about this and how you can begin to rebuild your life once you take that step to break up. So don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soul CPR. I'm Ann Papayotti, and today we're talking about breaking up is hard to do, especially when it's from a narcissist. So one thing I want you to be prepared for when you break up with a narcissist is that they're going to move on quickly when they finally let you go. And that's if they let you go. And we'll talk more about that in a moment also. But know that you may feel jealous. Narcissists tend to replace their exes within weeks if they let go. Now, that's if not within days of breaking up, because often there's already a supply. We call it narcissistic supply. They often have, a room full, if you will, waiting. They're numbered, if you will. So they have to have a supply source. So they're going to move on quickly if they choose to do so. They're going to have someone waiting to make sure their supply is secure. If not, they're not letting you go. So since they struggle with healthy attachment styles, they don't have authentic feelings. So there's this arrangement thing that tends to happen. So when you stop accepting abuse, they move on to someone who will accept it. So if rather than feeling jealous or inadequate or I wasn't enough and he or she must be better than I am, and letting that somehow label you as not good enough or unworthy of in your inability to change them, if you can instead see this person through eyes of compassion, because they're just the next person who's caught up in their web. I can tell you in my own personal story, um, my ex held on and held on and held on while I tiptoed, as I mentioned earlier, for years. But when I remarried, he remarried within 6 weeks of me. But he didn't let go of me and this constant pursuit until I remarried. And it was really amazing to see that that's kind of what it took. But it wasn't that there weren't other people already in his life, obviously, right? Anyway, what's your story? I'd love to hear from you. If you put it in the chat, if you want to call in or anything to share. How did you break free? What was your success story? Again, I'm the poster child of how not to do it. I let it go on for years. Again, that goes back to that narcissistic abuse syndrome, that avoidance and fear and anxiety, and the struggle to have any kind of self-worth and self-esteem to make decisions. I was building mine, but I had a narcissist who had some other diagnoses as well, that had sociopathic tendencies, and there was some real fear there. But eventually, I moved on, so did he, and we're in a very different place at this stage of our life because I grew and I learned boundaries. Now, where do you begin to heal from all this, right? It's really going to take, especially if you're in a situation like me, it took years of me learning to get back on my feet. If you've been in years of abuse, give yourself years. Now, getting back on your feet means finding that sense of self, learning to trust yourself again, getting in the right place, understanding who you are, what you stand for, getting back to who you were before. You're still going to grieve as well. No relationship is something to just get over, right? There's so much there. There's the grieving the loss of what should have been. I always thought I'd get married once. It was tied to so many childhood dreams and expectations. But you're going to grieve. You're going to have to let yourself grieve and move through all of that. And it's not necessarily the person. I was relieved to be out of the relationship, but there was a lot of grieving that had to go on. And yes, then I had to co-parent and still be interacting with the narcissist, but I had to learn how to do that in a way that still allowed me a sense of self and a sense of control that took a while to get. Feeling grateful, finding gratitude, and feeling grateful for the people that stood by me, that allowed me back in and to be myself and to be open with my story, to be able to share that and to accept me, right, all of me, and to as I move forward. Now, I believe today's topic is extremely important because I find so many people that I meet in my line of work settle for unhealthy, toxic relationships out of fear. And as we've spoken about before in previous relationships, some do for different reasons, some to not be alone, but so many I meet are controlled in their relationships and have truly sacrificed who they are and what they believe in to hold on to the concept of marriage or to the idea that they are responsible for someone else. And relationships with narcissists usually begin in that too good to be true kind of style. And by that I mean love bombing and rushing to commitment. There's lots of flattery and seemingly emotional connection. And I say seemingly because it's not real. I've never met anyone like you, or I knew when I first saw you. Any words that make your heart flutter. And there may be lots of gifts and certainly lots of attention, and maybe to the point of being overwhelming. But this is known as idealization. But once they have you, the next phase is the de-evaluation, when they begin to put you down. And then it's the discard phase, followed by hoovering, so named for the brand of vacuum cleaner, meaning to suck you right back in. So they keep you off guard, going from making you feel like the most special person in the world, like their soulmate, to finally kind of dropping their mask and becoming subtly emotionally abusive. I was just kidding when they say something that hurts your feelings, to you're too sensitive, they'll accuse you of being, until it's not so subtle anymore and it becomes outright verbally abusive, and you become confused about your own reality as they blame you, and then you doubt yourself and end up apologizing. And then they discard you by becoming cold and callous and throw you away. It feels like they do their very own garbage. And in a marriage, I often see this as like the silent treatment, right? And this can last as long as the narcissist chooses. In other words, they may have beaten you down until there's nothing more to get from you, so they just ignore you until there's a reason for them to start the cycle back up. Because they're never really done with you as long as you're available to them. Do you hear that? As long as you're available to them. Now, when I say it took me years to finally completely disconnect from my narcissist, he kept trying, but I became unavailable to him. Now, it took a lot because he became a stalker and all this stuff. And at first I tiptoed, and then I got stronger and stronger, and I put more in place. Again, boundaries for me. But his entitlement didn't stop. He had this entitlement over me, he thought. But I had to disallow. And once I got there, I was no longer available to him. There was some safety there. But let me tell you, and this happened to me, when there's nothing more they can get from you, right, they'll start the cycle back up. They're never really done with you as long as you're available to them. They may cry, tell you they love you, shower you with gifts, play the victim, and do whatever it takes, maybe even threaten suicide. Playing on your empathy, anything to get you back in their orbit. If that happens, call 911 if they're threatening suicide. Do not try to save them. Now, the other thing I want you to know is that if you do resist greatly from this stage, which is the hoovering, you're probably going to watch them go into narcissistic collapse again or narcissistic rage, that behave badly again. Now, the only way to break this cycle is to break the cycle. Make a plan, get support, and stick to it. It's never too late to get out. Now, it's critical to state that anyone who has suffered physical violence, that escalation is possible, and to have a safety plan in place as well. Work with a lawyer or a local shelter to prepare. Do not tell an abuser you are leaving. You plan it and you do it with secrecy. Okay. Now, the National Domestic Abuse Hotline can help as well, as can your local police department once the plan is prepared. And the National Domestic Hotline, we will put that on at the end of the show, and it'll be in the show notes as well. It's hotline.org. Okay, www.hotline.org. And there's a phone number we'll put up for you as well. All right. Do not think you need to be the one to save them. You can't. I said it at the beginning of the show, and I said it for a reason, because you can't. You have to save yourself. Again, do not reveal your plan. It can always escalate if there's been physical violence in the past. It is predictable for the future. If there's been a threat, it's predictable. And emotional abuse can also escalate. So I think everyone should have a safety plan before leaving an abusive partner. I don't think I handled mine as well as I could. And if you remember, I had Lee Hayes on a show before, and she worked with a counselor to create a safety plan for her exit as well, for herself and her child. So you might want to go back and look at that episode as well about domestic violence if this is your situation. All right, it's time for our final break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more and wrap this up for today. So don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth, and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for listening to this show. I think it's very important. It's something that comes up so often in my client sessions and in support groups that people either question their relationships, believe they're either in relationship with a narcissist or are struggling to make decisions. I have people in support group that are are embarrassed to talk about their relationships because of how they've lived. Their self-esteem is so damaged from having been belittled through the years. They're trapped in some form of the controlling relationship that I was talking about. And they'll go through that cycle. And when I tell them that these are the stages of having been in relationship with a narcissist, they recognize that they were love bombed or swept off their feet. That the beginning of the relationship was like a fantasy. And they recognize how quickly it moved, right? And how soon the narcissist got them to commit to them, but then how rapidly it changed also, and how they recognized how they were slowly maybe cut off from friends and family or even coworkers. And then their social life was impacted, their family life was impacted, and then they lost their sense of self, and that they were once happy and outgoing, and now they're not. And so when they recognize it, it's sometimes they feel like it's too late to recover their life. But I'm telling you that it's not. It's never, ever, ever too late. Um, Breaking up with a narcissist is hard to do because they make it hard for you. Don't make it hard on yourself. It really is a decision. And once the decision's made, there needs to be a plan. And once the plan is in place, it's about staying committed to it and recognizing the pattern of a narcissist. They're quite predictable, honestly. They're the predictability of understanding what they're going to do next is helps you to stay on track, but also understanding narcissistic abuse syndrome and getting help and therapy, coaching, whatever is going to be best for you, and a support group if you can find one in your area or online for narcissistic abuse, and understanding it so that you can be rebuilding your self-esteem as you march on and forward through this. But if there's any takeaway for today, um, I would say, and I was just talking to Chris, my intern, who is in the room today, but he was like, I said, what's your takeaway? And he's like, just do the right thing and get out. And that's a great takeaway, but it's not always that easy, is it? It is, that's where we get to, and getting there and wanting to get out is the first thing. Next takeaway, you have to go no contact. No contact, because they will continue to manipulate you. And again, if you have to have contact because there's a co-parenting situation or because of the role they play in your life, they're a parent, they're whatever, then it's very boundaried. Again, the boundaries are for you. All right. If you have questions, comments, hope you'll put them in the comments for us. Again, this was not intended to be political. It was simply observational, and I hope you can take it in that sense for my comments earlier. And as we conclude this episode of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud, just remember that healing is not a linear journey. It is a process of profound transformation. And if today's stories resonated with you, please share this podcast with those who might need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. We greatly appreciate that. You can connect with me on social media. You'll find me on Facebook at Skyview Coaching and at Ann Papayotti on Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. And let us know, again, your thoughts, your stories, and what other topics you'd like us to explore here on Soul CPR. And I'm going to put Chris to work. And I think I'm going to have guests the next 2 weeks. I think they've got amazing stories, and I look forward to introducing them. They're two very special ladies in my life, and They have one, we're going to be honoring a friend who passed away, and we're going to share the story that she would have liked to have shared with you. So that was going to be a tough one for me. But anyway, until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. Thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully. Have a great day.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.